which talks of all the lineage, it talks of all the manvantaras, so different. One day of Brahma is supposed to have 14 manvantaras, and also the glorification and description and the katha of all the kings. So all of that is called Purana. I don't know, this is Purana Lakshanam. Actually, Purana is only singing the glory of God actually, and his bhaktas, that is the Purana. Nobody is interested in knowing about merely kings. What is described in Puranas are all those who have significantly contributed to the human life in terms of the religious life. So Puranas are not itihasa. Puranas are mystic, you can say, literature, which actually talks about the religious or mystic experiences of some great people, and the opposite also. And that is the victory of the greatness or victory of the divine above the mundane or the profane, So that is what Purana actually tells us. Of course, by way of saying that, it also describes creation and describes the lineage, but then they are the minor part of the Purana. If you take Bhagavatam or Shiva, whatever, singing the glory of the Lord and his devotees really is the main aspect of Purana, where the meaning of the Vedas are all brought out in either symbolic way or in the form of the stories. So this is what Puranas do. They only amplify or expound the meaning of the Vedas. Nyaya padarthanam sarvesham anugama rupena prakashakah grantha. Nyaya is that which illumines the meaning of the life actually. The purpose of Nyaya is to tell us about the very truth of life. Nyaya is what are the niyama. So what are those rules and what are those fundamental truths that govern the life? That is the purpose of Nyaya. Nyaya always gives you a definition of various things. Purpose of Nyaya is only the defining or arriving at the truth. So that Shastra which through reason seeks to arrive at the truth, like a scientist through reason seeks to arrive at the truth. So also Nyaya is the Shastra which seeks to arrive at the truth through reasoning, and for that purpose which analyzes all our experiences and wants to find out an order in and through the experiences, like a scientist would want to do. He observes the phenomenon and arrives at a certain order which he expresses in the form of a mathematical equation or a graph or a relationship or whatever. And so also the Naiyayikas, these are the people who observe the various, they want to interpret the various experiences by showing or revealing the rule that is in the order that is involved in those experiences. That is the purpose. And for that they have adopted certain methodology, beautiful methodology, like scientists have adopted mathematics, etc. So also the Naiyayikas have adopted some very beautiful way of expression. So all the Shastra which seeks to arrive at the truth by seeking the fundamental order, by interpreting or analyzing our experience is called Nyaya. Mimamsa is Shastra of analysis. Scripture is there like the Vedas, or any scripture is like the Sutras, and to analyze is the purpose of Mimamsa. Pujita Vichara or Vichara Purvaka Tattva Nirnaya. That's also beautiful. Mimamsa is Tattva Nirnaya. To arrive at the Tattva or the Tatparya, to arrive at the purport of a particular scripture or a particular statement is called Mimamsa. So Tattva Nirnaya. What is Tattva also? Not only Tatparya, but what is Tattva? What is the nature of truth? To arrive at the nature of truth through analysis is called Mimamsa, except that the Nyaya proceeds purely by logic and wants to arrive at the truth, whereas Mimamsa seeks to arrive at the truth through scripture. So Mimamsakas, for them the scripture is the pramanam, and they analyze the scripture to arrive at the truth that is revealed by the scripture. But there also the scripture could be interpreted in various ways, and therefore they have developed a methodology of how to arrive at the interpretation or purport of a scripture by various criteria. As we said, Shad Lingas are there, and that is how the Mimamsakas seek to ascertain the nature of truth by the analysis of the scripture. So Mimamsa is analyzing, Nyaya is reasoning, Dharma Shastra. Dharma is that which gives us the instruction pertaining to the do's and don'ts, meaning our achara, etc. So Dharma is then the means for attainment of Abhyudaya as well as Nishreyasa. Dharma is the right conduct, Sadachara. So these are fundamental Shastras, Purana, Nyaya Mimamsa and Dharma Shastra. So these Shastra plus Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Niruktam, Chandah, Jyotisham, these are supposed to be Shad Vedangas, Shadangas, they are the limbs of Vedas, which the study of which is necessary to understand the Vedas. Shiksha is science of phonetics, how to pronounce, etc. So a lot of analysis is made as to how the sounds are produced and how should the right sound be produced. That is the idea. The purpose of analyzing as to how the sounds are produced is how to produce the right sound. Because the Vedas must necessarily be pronounced or recited according to the tradition of the swaras. And one should have that control over the swaras to be able to produce the right kind of swaras and right kind of sounds. So Shiksha is the science of phonetics. So it's like the speech therapy type thing, or whatever. So they enable us to, they teach us how to properly utter or recite. Kalpa teaches us how to perform the various rituals. So the order and the procedure of the different rituals is described in Kalpa Shastra. Vyakaranam, Shabda Sadhutvam tells us how to understand a word. So what is the proper meaning of a word? Because unless you understand the word, you cannot understand the Vakya. And unless you understand the Vakya, you cannot understand the Vedas. And therefore, Vyakarana enables us to understand the meaning of the words. By giving us the derivations, by giving us the various prefixes, suffixes, all mechanism that is involved in arriving at a word. And also therefore the mechanism involved in arriving at a sentence, of course. So, Padartha and Vakyartha. How to arrive at the correct meaning is what Vyakarana teaches us. For that, they also teach us that whole order involved. Because language is a product of the human mind, which has evolved over centuries. And when it is evolved, a certain kind of an order goes into that. It is not that without rhyme and reason that certain words have come into being or that certain expressions and idioms are used. What is involved in that? That's what the Vyakarana seek to analyze. And that is how they analyze also the function of the human mind and also the functioning of the whole system of producing the sound. And therefore they have their own philosophy also, because sound ultimately is a fundamental truth. And therefore, by analyzing the sound also they seek to analyze the truths and whatever. So Vyakarana as a discipline of knowledge is one, Vyakarana also as a darshanam is another one. But Vyakaranam is the purpose to enable us, give us the tools to enable us to understand the words and the sentences. Nirukta, there are so many words of which the origin is not known to us or which are very difficult for us to understand. Many words are used in the Vedas which are very ancient. Niruktam, it gives us the meaning of these words employed in Vedas. It is like a Vedic dictionary. Chandaha, the science of prosody. The chanda, all these alankaras, how to recite and how the different chandas are arrived at. Jyotisham, the science of astronomy, which is also required because astronomy, we are a part and parcel of the whole creation, and therefore an understanding of the order of the creation is the purpose of science of astronomy. So that what we do also should be in order. The reason why there is a specification as to when a given ritual should be performed. That is also important. How a ritual should be performed is told by Kalpa Shastra. But when the ritual should be performed is told by Jyotisha. It should be performed at a given date, at a given time. And why is it so? That's what the science of astronomy would want to analyze, That there is certain order in the universe. And the human being also being a part of the creation, human being also is influenced by that order. And therefore whatever we do, if it is in keeping with that order, then that ritual or the action also will be more efficacious, rather than performing something which perhaps does not conform to the order, may not be efficacious. Therefore, the time and the situation and the condition becomes very important. So what does it matter, Swamiji? Why do they have to say that this is the right time? That this Monday is good and Tuesday is bad and Ashtami is good, and why? God has created time and He has created everything equal. Why should one time be superior to other time? Why should one food be better than other food? God has created food, is everything equal that God has created? Then every time of the day is as good as every other time. Why don't you sleep in the afternoon? Why do you have to sleep at night? Why don't you work at night and sleep in the afternoon? God has created all time equal. Why don't you eat at 3:30 in the afternoon rather than eating at 10:30 in the morning? And why do you take the tea at 6:30 in the morning and then why don't you take it at 1:30 at night? Why do we do things according to certain time? Because there is a rhythm. There is a rhythm in our body, that's called the biological rhythm. There is a rhythm also around, So there is a rhythm involved. Where rhythm is there, timing is important. Like in orchestra. Where rhythm is there, is important when you do that clicking or when you do, Otherwise, if there is no rhythm, you can do as you like in a random manner. But where rhythm is there, then it is very important how the drummer we must have a rhythm. Otherwise, it will just create, what kind of effect is created when the rhythm is not maintained. So, astronomy tells us there is a rhythm in the whole universe. And there is a rhythm in the human life also. So what we do should be in that rhythm. That's the purpose of astronomy. So times are important. Don't dismiss them. If you don't know it, that's a different thing. If you don't want to care for it, it's a different thing. But then, we should not say that it's all wrong. It's only we do not understand. That's a different thing. And we may not understand. We may not be able to rely upon people. All Jyotishis are wrong. That is your personal opinion and we don't want to say anything about them. The point is, there is such a thing as the Jyotish Shastra. And the purpose of the Shastra is to enable us to understand the rhythm. Every individual has a different rhythm. Every individual is unique. Rhythm is determined by their own karma, according to which they are born at a given time and place in a situation. And that rhythm also the Jyotish Shastra enables us to know, so we can understand how the order of our life is and what to do. So when they shoot out the rocket to moon, then there are also secondary engines in order to guide So here the rocket is shot out all right, but to correction, the path correction, so the rocket remains on the right path. There are secondary engines there which keep firing now and then. Similarly, the basic path of our life is there, charted out, which is what we call prarabdha. By Purushartha, we can always keep it on track, you see. And that is the purpose of Purusha. That's why we want to know what the basic path is and what we should do. Do some prayers here, do some action here, and so on and so forth to keep things on track. Anyway, so this is Jyotisham. All the Shastras, and so all of them are very important. All of these Shadangani, iti Dasha Vidyasthanani, these are primary. Sometimes they talk of 18 Ashtadasha Vidyasthanani also. Vedartha Jnana Hetavaha. So all of these are Vedartha Jnana Hetavaha. Vedartha Jnanam, the knowledge of the purport of the Vedas, or what is the meaning that is revealed by the Vedas. For knowing that, all of these Shastras are also Hetavaha. All of them are Hetus, helpful or necessary in order to understand the meaning of the Vedas. Taihi, so Aneka Vidya Sthano Upabrumhitasya Taihi Upakritasya. So Upakritasya means that which is supported by, helped by all the Shastra, that is a Veda Shastra. Therefore, Purnanandiya said, Puranadi Dasha Vidya Sthaneshu Vedartha eva Pratipadyate. This is our belief, Shraddha. That Puranadi Dasha Vidya Sthaneshu. Because people can always question things, that's why we are saying. And people will question you. You may keep repeating the words, perhaps with conviction, not having thought about what are the limitations of all the statements. So always the scientist always defines boundary conditions, that this particular equation or relationship is valid within this boundary, keeping the pressure constant, keeping temperature constant, or within these limits of pressure, temperature, whatnot. These are all the axioms or assumptions involved. Whenever any statement is made, immediately assumptions are always stated. Any scientist must state, or anybody who is thinking person has to know that. And therefore we are just telling you here, that just for your information. So, you don't become fanatic and don't keep on repeating things, without knowing what is involved in that. So, Puranadi Dasha Vidya Sthaneshu Vedartha eva. Then you have to discover this. That all the Puranas and all the Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharma Shastra and all of these, the primary purpose of them is Vedartha eva Pratipadyate. Because Vedas are the source book. And they are the Pramanam which doesn't depend upon any other source. While these are Pramanam only in a secondary sense, in as much as all of them are based on Veda as a source of knowledge. So if there is a contradiction between Purana and Veda, then we will have to accept Vedas. That is why Veda is the original source book. But then, in as much as all the other texts or the treatises, the granthas, they only expound the meaning of the Vedas, we also accept them as pramanam, because we may not have the reach to the original Vedas, we may not be able to trace the original things, we may not be able to understand original things, and therefore very often, like Bhagavad Gita may explain several mantras of the Upanishads, then we can see when Lord Krishna interprets given mantras of Upanishads in a given way, then that becomes a valid interpretation of those mantras. So when such sages as Manu and all of these people, when they write the Smriti Granthas, they are expounding or revealing certain truths which are revealed in Vedas, then we know that this is how the Vedas should be understood. Therefore, these sages, whose works are like commentaries or expositions upon the Vedas, enable us to understand the Vedas also. That is why the Smriti Granthas also become important. And very often we find Bhashyakara also quoting Smritis or Itihasa or Puranas to verify or confirm or understand the meaning of the Vedas. So Vedartha eva pratipadyate tasmat arthatopi vedasya mahatvam. When such great scriptures, the only purpose is that to explain the Vedas, then imagine the profundity of the meaning of the Vedas. There are so many scriptures are required in order to expound the meaning of the Vedas. Then what is the greatness or profundity of the meaning of the Vedas? Therefore, arthatah api vedasya mahatvam. Shabdatah, of course here he says, because merely by the utterance or recital, it brings about our well-being. Therefore, shabdatah mahatvam, and inasmuch as the meaning is so profound, arthatah mahatvam cha. इति अनेक विद्यास्थानोपबृंहितस्य इति अनेन भाष्येण प्रतिपादयमिति भावः. So why the bhashya Rugvedadehe? It says how Mahatah Rugvedadehe shows how Rugvedadehe, that explains one part of Mahatvam. Mahatah means great, Veda is great, great in terms of words and great in terms of meanings. How words? Rugvedadehe, because they are very sacred scriptures. The words of Vedas are sacred. Therefore the very utterance brings about auspiciousness. So that sacredness is indicated by Rugvedadehe. And Arthatah Mahatvam, how the meaning also is profound, is indicated by Bhashyakara's expression, Aneka Vidyasthano Upabhrumhitasya. How the Upabhrumhitasya is Vyakhyadasya. That Vedas are expounded or explained by so many other scriptures. That shows the profundity of the meaning. Hita shasanat shastratvam. Hita shasanat hitartha pratibadagatvad ityartha. Then Ratnaprabha says shastra shabdah shastra matropalakshanaartha iti matva. Matrabdam karsnyarthakam shabda matrasya upalakshanam artha yasya saha tatha न केवलम शास्त्र शब्दस्य वेद समुदाय एवर्थ किंतु कृष्ण शब्द समुदाय त्वा आह इत्यर्थः. सो ऋग्वेदादेः शास्त्रस्य महतः ऋग्वेदादेः शास्त्रस्य. द वर्ड शास्त्र इज एक्सप्लेन्ड as not merely to be confined to Vedas, but the Shastra words should include all the scriptures. Shastra sabdyasya na kevalam Veda samudaya, Veda shabda samudaya varta. The word Shastra is confined not merely to the body of the words which is Vedas. Kintu Krishna Shabda Samudaya Heti Matva. All these scriptures also should be included in the word Shastra, of which Rug Veda is the primary one. Aneka, so Vedartha Jnana Hetavha Taihi Upakritasya, meaning Taihi Vyakhyadasya Ityartha. Says Ratnaprabha, therefore, Anena Manvadibhi Parigrihitatvena Vedasya Pramanyam Suchidam. Anena Manvadibhi Parigrihitatvena. Manu, so some great sage such as Manu, Yajnavalkya, Parashara, all of these great sages have written Smriti Granthas. And the purpose of the Smriti Granthas is to only elaborate or expound or explain the statements of Vedas. So Manu, Parashara, Yajnavalkya, all these great sages accepted Vedas as Pramanam. And that is how the Pramanya of the Vedas is further confirmed It is not that they give pramanyam. Just because Manu or Yajnavalkya, all of them, adopted or decided to explain Vedas does not prove the pramanyam, but definitely supports the pramanyam. It increases our own reverence. That when such great people look upon it so reverently, like such great people of the world, as Oppenheimer and so many other, Gandhiji and so forth, so many people looked upon Bhagavad Gita as such sacred scriptures and found so much inspiration from that. Therefore, this Gita is not that the pramanyam of Gita is proven by that, but the pramanyam of the Gita definitely gets a boost, So, the pramanyam of the authenticity gets a boost. That is how here also manvadvihi parigrahitattvena vedasya pramanyam sujito brahma vedanam prathamassambhabhuva vishwasya karta bhuvanasya gopta sab brahma vidyam sarva vidya pratishtham atharvaya jyeshta putraya praha. So this Brahma Vidya, which is Sarva Vidya Pratishtha, is coming down to us from Brahmaji and Atharvana, and such great sages are involved in that lineage that also glorifies the Vidya. Doesn't give pramanyam to the Vidya, but definitely gives glorification to the Vidya, and that's how it creates reverence in us and also creates Shraddha in us. Says Puranandya, Vedasya Mula Pramana Sabekshatva Abhavat Na Pramanyamidi Pramanya Muktva, that Veda is not dependent upon any other source of knowledge, and therefore it is the source of knowledge, and therefore it is Pramanam. If eyes have to depend upon ears to determine the color of a thing, Suppose eyes require me to touch. What's the color of this object in my hand? Orange color. How do you say that? Oh, I determine by touch. So I say that it is orange, but it was necessary for me to verify it by touching it. Then I can say it is orange. In that case, eyes depend upon some other source for its verification. It doesn't become the sole means of knowledge. It's not called pramanam. Pramanam is that which does not depend upon any other source of knowledge to reveal the meaning or object. So Vedas are called pramanam because they do not depend upon any other source of knowledge to reveal the meanings. Therefore, Vedasya pramanyam uktva manvadi parigrahitatvacha pramanyam astityaha, and then that pramanyam is further verified because it is adopted by such great sages as Manu, etc. So anena manvadihi parigrahitatvena vedasya pramanyam parigrahitatvena vyakhyatattvena, that Manu and other sages also have expounded upon the Vedas, therefore also Vedas have pramanyam. अप्रामाण्य साधक युक्त है अभावात प्रामाण्य उपाद्य हेत्वंतर परत्वेन भाष्यम उतारयति, that we don't have any reason to say that Vedas are not pramanam. Apramanya sadhaka yukta hai abhavat, there is no yukti with us which will establish the apramanya of the Vedas, because we said Veda is not paurushaya. So paurushayatvam will be apramanya sadhaka yukti, but Veda is not paurushaya, and therefore Vedas are pramanam. At the same time manvadihi parigrahitatvad and whatever, so aneka vidya sthanopabrohitatvad, therefore also Vedasya pramanyam is established here. Then hetvantar partvena, that gives us another hetu as to why Veda should be considered as pramanam. Says Ratna Prabhakara, abodhakatva abhavadapi, where Purnananda believes bodhakatvadapi, which appears to be more, simple. Abodhakatva abhavat, that would only have pramanya sadhaka yukte hai abhavat. Means abodhakatva abhavat means bodhakatva bhavat. So Vedas actually teach us. Bodhaka means it gives us the knowledge, it enlightens us on everything. So there is nothing about which Vedas, there is nothing that is not found in Vedas. Abodhakatva bhavat, that's what it means. That whatever you want to know, or whatever discipline knowledge is required, all of that is dealt with in Vedas, and that says Veda does not have abodhakatvam. There is something that Vedas do not teach. You will find everything in Vedas. So abodhakatva bhavadapi pramanyam. So it should be stated that apramanya sadhaka yukta hai abhavat. But then better is bodhakatvadapi. Vedas are pramana because bodhakatvad. What does a pramana or a means of knowledge do? A means of knowledge reveals the object. Eyes are called pramanam because they reveal the colors. Ears are pramanam because they reveal the sounds. And thus all of these are called pramanam, or the valid means of knowledge, because they all act like a lamp. Like a lamp reveals the different objects. These pramanam are the means of knowledge. They reveal their corresponding objects. Therefore they are called devas. Devatana deva. These indriyas are called devatas because all of them are shining things. Shining one is that which illumines. All of them illumine or reveal the corresponding objects. Therefore, all of these indriyas are also called devas. So, bodhakattvadapi. So, pradhipavat sarvavarthavat dyotinah vedasya mahatah. So, like a lamp, it illumines all the objects. Meaning it reveals everything like a lamp reveals the objects. Yatha chakshuradehe badhakatvat bodhakatvat pramanyam तथा बोधकत्वाद वेदस्य प्रामाण्य विद्याः. Just as chakshu etc. bodhakatvat, since they reveal, illumine or enlighten us with reference to their corresponding objects, so also the Vedas enlighten us with reference to the disciplines of knowledge, and therefore also Vedas are pramanam because bodhakam. So Vedas are pramanam because pramanantara sapekshatva bhavat, apaurushayatvat pramanantara sapekshatva bhavat, as well as apramanya sadhaka yukteha bhavat, and finally also bodhakatvat, because that is real pramanam which illumines, which reveals. Pradipavat sarvavarthavat dyotinah. Sarvagnikalpam says Ratnaprabha, सर्वार्थ प्रकाशन शक्तिमत्वे भी अचेतनत्वात् सर्वज्ञकल्पत्वम. So Sarvagnikalpa, Vedas are called Sarvagnikalpa, like Sarvagnya, almost omniscient. Kalpa pratyaya is in the sense of Ishad Una, a little less. Ishad means little, Una means less. Like Ekona Vimshati, Vimshati means 20, Eka Una means one less. That's how they. So Ekona Vimshati is one less out of 20. Una means less. Ishad means little. Ishaduna means little less. So Kalpa Pratyaya is in the sense of Ishaduna, little less than Sarvagnya, meaning not quite Sarvagnya. In calculus, the limit to Sarvagnyatvam, you can say, no? Not quite Sarvagnyatvam, but then that's how Ishaduna Pratyaya. They don't want to say it is not Sarvagnyam. Don't want to say Sarvagnyam also. So you always say limit. So Sarvartha Prakashana Shaktimatvepi. Even though we accept that Vedas are Sarvartha Prakashana Shakti, Shakti is there in Veda, we don't want to say that Vedas are lacking in knowledge. Vedas do not lack in knowledge. Sarvartha Prakashana Shaktitvepi, that they have the Shakti of the power to reveal everything that there is to know. Acetanatvat Sarvagnikalpatvam. Since Vedas are still of the nature of words, and therefore they are not Chetana or conscious, and that is the only difference between Ishvara and Veda. That Vedas are in the nature of words, Achetana, and Ishvara is Chetana. So Ishvara is Sarvagnya or omniscient in primary sense. Vedas are little less than omniscient because their Sarvagnyatvam is due to something else, not themselves. That's what I said earlier. That Upadana Karanagata Shaktitva or whatever. So Shakti that is there in the Veda is due to the Karanam and not their own. In that sense alone we say that Vedas are Sarvagnikalpa and not quite Sarvagnya. So, Acetanatvat Sarvagnikalpatvam. Sarvagnikalpasya Yonihi. Yoni means what? The source, the womb. Upadanam Kartrucha. They want to make sure that we understand Yoni. Apadana Panchami, Shastra Yonitvat. Yoni itself is of course the cause, and their cause is both material cause and efficient cause. Upadanam Kartrucha. Kartru is of efficient cause, Upadanam material cause. Meaning Vedas, the God or Brahman is the very intelligence behind the Vedas and very Vedas. So the intelligence alone appearing as Vedas is called, that's how we say it. When Brahma is considered to be Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam, the very intelligence appearing as universe. You see? That's why you find intelligence everywhere in universe. Nothing is unintelligent. Human being is the only fellow who may be unintelligent. Otherwise there is no unintelligence anywhere. Everything is functioning intelligently. Every cell is functioning intelligently. Every atom functions intelligently. Everything functions intelligently. We may or may not know the intelligence behind it, or we may not have as yet grasped the order that is there in a cell or in an atom. But everybody is quite sure that whatever we find or observe is intelligent. Otherwise they will not have any activity to search for it. The fact that scientists are in search for a fundamental order shows that they have a basic belief that there is intelligence there. It is all orderly. Even though we at the moment say it is all probability. But then we have not dismissed it. We hope that we will at some day be able to find some order there. So even that probability also is intelligent, we will have to say. Anyway, it is intelligence alone. Don't think that it is atom that is intelligent. Intelligence is atom. You understand? It's not that a cell is intelligent. Intelligence alone is cell. Intelligence manifests itself as a cell, as an atom, as the whole universe. So you don't have to go any place to see that intelligence. Depends on how you like to see God. If you are an intelligent person, you may like to see intelligence, fine, you find it everywhere. That is not an expression of God, that is God. If it is expression of God, then it becomes karta. It is God, becomes upadanam. So we call it expression of God, and then ultimately see it as God. You begin with nimitta karanatvam, and ultimately arrive at upadana karanatvam is more difficult than nimitta karanatvam. That's why all the religions, all of them accept God as nimitta karanam. Nobody talks about upadana karanam. It's tough to see God in all these things that we observe. Nobody has the strength to say that this world is God. Nobody can say that. Only Vedas say that the world is God, regardless of how it is. That requires a lot of strength. It's very easy to dismiss God because we find injustice and disparity and things like that. Anybody can say. But in spite of that, it is all God. That requires a much greater, is a great profundity. Something that can transcend this apparent disparity. And apparent, whatever unconvincing things are there, one that can penetrate or transcend that, alone can perceive that some beauty is there behind all this apparent ugliness. So we were watching one video, we must have told you last time. So the scientists, what do they think of the reality? Something simple and beautiful. Although what they find is more and more complex. It looks as though as more and more research you do, or more and more you know, more and more complex that reality seems to become, or more and more complexities of reality seem to be revealed. But they don't think that the reality is complex. In the heart of the heart, they say that the truth is simple and beautiful. Reality has to be simple. It cannot be complex, cannot be complicated. Otherwise you will love complexity, but you don't love. You love simplicity. Truthfulness is the simplest thing. Truth means simple. There is no complexity at all, and therefore we cannot tolerate even the slightest deviation from truth. When Lord Rama does something, why did he hit Vali from behind? We don't like that. Because we don't want to see the truth being contaminated at all. So that which is unpolluted, uncontaminated alone can be truth. Therefore Nitya Shuddha, it has to be. So everybody believes in the heart of their heart that the truth of the reality is something very simple and beautiful also. Not only simple, beauty is in simplicity apparently, Otherwise we think that when we paint and do things, ornament, then it becomes beautiful. No, the beauty is in the very nature of the thing. Anyway, so here, upadanam kartracha. Veda, Brahma is both upadanam, meaning the very material, as well as kartru, the very intelligence. The very intelligence and material are one alone. This is a fantastic thing. We start with, it is very difficult for anybody to see the upadanatma of God. It's easier for us to see the nimittatva of God. सब भगवान करते हैं, सब ठीक है. Or we can see the Lord's Leela, or we can see His play, and we can see His blessing, and we can see His grace in whatever is happening. But to see Him is more difficult. So nimitta karanatvam is easier to appreciate. To appreciate to look upon sun as a symbol of God is easier than look upon sun as God. Because it's scorching also. And so to look upon that scorching also as God is difficult. That is ultimate in the knowledge. Ultimate in wisdom is that alone, is to discover the upadana karanatvam. So here they simply say, Yonihi upadanam kartrucha. Always keep in mind that there is one alone. If upadanam is different, there are two. Therefore, the kartru, intelligence and matter, spirit and matter cannot be two. It is spirit alone which appears as matter. Because when you really analyze the matter, it reduces itself to spirit. Therefore, although it looks material, it is all spiritual. There is no material thing at all. Everything is spiritual. Therefore, everything is divine. Therefore, everything is God. Except that we have to see that divinity. We cannot. Because of our own limitations and likes and dislikes and prejudices, it's difficult for us to see divinity in most of the things. There are few things which can inspire us, but that's how we have to grow in our own purity, so that the divinity which is there, which requires certain eyes to see, this is what we have to cultivate in terms of the purity of our own mind. But the truth is that Brahma is both Upadanam and Kartru. So if you cannot see divinity somewhere, don't dismiss that thing. Let us see what I should do with myself to see the divinity there. That's the reason why Vedantins seek not to change anything, not to expect anything. Why Lord Krishna talks about karma phala anabhisandhi, that okay, don't even worry about the karma phala. Don't make any demands of any kind. Moment you make a demand, you expect a change, then you are not looking at the truth as it is. For you to see the thing as it is, there should be no demand. That's a tremendous mind which does not demand anything. The mind that has been demanding moment to moment, to make that mind not demanding is a tremendous thing. But that is the ideal mind which doesn't make any demand. And that mind will see things as it is. That will see God, because that's what it is. But I want to see God all right, but God of a particular kind, in a particular form. How can you call? God should be like this alone. It should appear like this. It should act like this. It should behave like this. How can God be like this? And therefore, we want to see God according to our own prejudices, our own complexes, and therefore we fail to see Him. So it is not that then we try to create God according to our own complexes. So man created God in his own image and stuff like that. But really speaking, that we have to become of the image of God. That's why they always say Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi, that you are already. Therefore, you have to grow to that. And that potential of growth is in there in you. And that potential alone is first pointed out. And that is how, with Shraddha, we proceed. So, Yonihi Upadanam Kartrucha. This is how Brahma is both the Kartru as well as Upadanam. Yonihi Karanam Brahma. Now continuing, Ratnaprabha says, Nanu Sarvajnasya Gunaha Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvam Vedasya Tat Anutatvebi Tad Yonehe Sarvajnatvam Kudaha. Sarvajnasya Gunaha, we call Veda as Sarvajna or omniscient. Why do we call the Vedas omniscient? Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvam. Because Vedas possess the power of revealing or of making us know everything. Since Vedas have all the knowledge in them, therefore we call Veda as Sarvajna. So Sarvajnasya yo gunaha sarvartha jnana shaktimatvam vedasya tadanvitatvebi. So criterion for Sarvajnatvam is sarvartha jnana shaktimatvam. And we find that sarvartha jnana shaktimatvam in Vedas, therefore we call Veda as Sarvajna. First of all, what is the criterion for Sarvajnatvam? Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvam. That which is able to provide us the knowledge of everything. And that Lakshana or that characteristic we find in Vedas, therefore we say Vedas are Sarvajna. So Vedaha Sarvajnaha Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvat. This is how illustration is not there, but anyway, Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvat Vedaha Sarvajnaha. So the Anvitatvebi. Tadin Sarvajñatva Anvitatvepi. Even though we find that Sarvajñatva Lakshanam in Vedas, and then we say that Vedas are endowed with Sarvajñatvam or omniscience, even then, Tad Yonehe Kudah Sarvajñam. How do you say that the cause of the Vedas are Sarvajña? Vedas are Sarvajña alright because that is our own direct experience. That Sarvartha Jnana Prakashakatvam is there, whatever. But then but we do not know the cause of the Vedas. Cause is unmanifest for us. Vedas are manifest and therefore we can verify ourselves that the criterion for Sarvajñatvam is there in Vedas. But the cause of the Vedas which is not manifest to us, how do we say that the Brahma also is Sarvajñam? Tad yonehe Sarvajñatvam kutah. It cannot be because we can't verify that. The Anumana has to be applied. So then comes the Bhashyakara nahi iti. Nahi idrishasya shastrasya rigvedadi lakshanasya sarvajña gunanvitasya sarvajñat anyatah sambhavah asti. Nahi idrishasya shastrasya. Shastra of this kind, Shastra which is like this. Mahatah Rugvedadehe Anek Vidyasthanopabramhitasya Pradivat Sarvartha Prakashakasya or Sarvavarthavat Dyotinah Shastrasya Sarvajñikalpasya. Shastra suggests this. Idrishasya Shastrasya Rugvedadi Lakshanasya Shastrasya Sarvajña Gunanvitasya. Shastra which is of the nature of Rugveda etc., which is endowed with Sarvajñatvam, omniscience, inasmuch as it reveals everything that is to be known. Sarvajñat anyatah sambhavah nasti. It is not possible that Shastra suggests this could ever have originated from a source which is less than Sarvajña or which is anything other than Sarvajña. It cannot be. Because Shastra itself manifests Sarvajñatvam and the cause which must necessarily be superior to the effect can be at least Sarvajñam. And therefore, Sarvajñatvam, the cause, is established by Anumanam and not by Pratyaksha. That's the thing. Says Ratnaprabha on page 118, Upadane tat shaktim vina karye tadayogat. As Upadana of the material, the cause, has that power, karye in the effect, it cannot be. Unless the material, namely gold, has preciousness, the ornament cannot be precious. So unless the material cause has those qualities, the effect cannot manifest those qualities. Effect, namely Vedas, manifest the characteristic called Sarvajñatvam. Therefore, its cause, Upadana Karanam Brahma, must have that Sarvajñatvam. Upadane tat shaktim vina karye tadayogat. Tat shakti means Sarvajñatva shaktim or Sarvartha Jnana shakti ayogat. Karye Sarvartha Jnana shaktitva ayogyatvam. Shaktitva ayogat. Veda Upadanasya Sarvajñam. And therefore, Veda Upadanam meaning the cause of the Veda must have Sarvajñatvam or omniscience. Anumanam to Purvam Darshitam. We already told you Anumanam, which for our information Puranandiya tells us. Vede Swartha Prakashaka Shakti Upadana Shakti Purvika Tad Gatava Ityad Anumanam Ityartha. Vede Swartha Prakashaka Shakti. That Veda has the Shakti or the power of revealing all the arthas. Upadana Shakti Purvika, it must necessarily be preceded by or it must be inherited from the Upadanam. Tad Gatava, or that very Upadanam itself, it provides the Shakti in the form of Vedas, or Upadanam provides the Shakti to Veda, either way. Either the Upadanam provides the Shakti to Vedas, or Upadanam itself is the Shakti of the Vedas. This Anumanam was already stated earlier. Another argument, that this kind of a thing, Sarvartha Jnana Shaktimatvam, is there in the Vedas as well as in another intermediate entity called Avidya. Avidya means Maya actually. So, Maya, Vedas are ultimately product of Maya. In that sense, Maya is nothing but the total locus of all the Shaktis and all the potential is Maya. And therefore, Vedas are also next step to that. So, first is Param Brahma, which is Nirvishesham. And since Nirvishesham Brahma cannot be the creator, therefore there has to be an agency called Maya, which brings about this creation. And therefore, whatever is there in the Vedas, so Maya becomes Upadana Karanam in a primary sense, Parinami Upadana Karanam, that whatever Shakti Vedas exhibit must necessarily be derived from its material cause, which is Maya. So Brahma is called material cause in terms of Vivarta Upadanatvam, and Maya is material cause in terms of Parinami Upadanatvam. So therefore somebody may say that avidya or Maya, why not? That also can be called Sarvajñam, or that the Sarvajñatvam that the Vedas have is inherited from Maya rather than from Brahma. So we may accept Maya as Sarvajña, but how do you say Brahma is Sarvajña? Naja avidyayaha tadapattihi. Tadapatti means Sarvajñatvapattihi or Sarvajñatvapattihi. You cannot say that avidya has Sarvajñatvam. Shaktimatvevi acetanatwadi bhava. Again, dismiss it in that sense. Shaktimatvevi. Even though Maya also has that Shakti of omniscience, therefore we cannot call Maya also Sarvajña in a primary sense. This is one Anumanam. Another Anumanam, inconvenient Anumanam is now a little presented. Anumanantaram. Anyway, says here, Karyagata Shaktimatvasya Karanagata Shakti Purvakatvat Karanagata Shakti Abhinnatvat Upadana Karanasya Sarvajñatvam Upapadya. It's easier inference. Karyagata Shaktimatvasya Karanagata Shakti Purvakatvat. That the Shakti that is found in the Karya or the effect is necessarily inherited from the Karanam, the cause. Karanagata Shakti Bhinnatvat, or the Shakti that is found in the Karya is necessarily nothing but the Shakti of Karana itself, either inherited from Karana or of the Karana, Abhinnatvat. Cha Upadana Karanasya Sarvajñatvam Upapadya. Upadana Karanam Brahma is Sarvajñam Upapadya. Upadya means shown with reason. It has been shown with Upapatti, meaning with reason. It has been shown that Brahma, which is Upadana Karanam, must be Sarvajñam. Veda Vishayartha Adhikartha Jnanavatvacha Sarvajñatvam Upapadayati iti. Then Veda Vishayartha Adhikartha Jnanavatvacha. Now another Anumanam is being presented, that the creator must necessarily have more knowledge than its creation. Like Pani must have more knowledge than what the sutras convey, or Kalidasa must have more knowledge than what his works convey. Because what you can express in words is never going to be equal to what you all know. Because there is a limitation in words, and there is at least a limitation in our ability to use words. So limitations are involved, and therefore words can never totally convey the knowledge that the person has. And if Vedas convey the Sarvajñatvam, but then the creator of the Veda must necessarily have more knowledge than even the Vedas, because Vedas are creation, and therefore that must be Sarvajña. This is the another Anumanam. First Anumanam is the Sarvajñatvam that the Vedas exhibit is inherited from the Kartru, or is nothing but that of the Kartru. Secondly, the Karanam must necessarily be superior to the Karya, and therefore the creator must have more knowledge than what is created. So the creator of the Vedas must have more knowledge than Vedas. That's the idea there. Therefore, Sarvajñatvam is to be established by that another Anumanantaram. Veda Vishayartha Adhikartha Jnanavatvacha Sarvajñatvam Upapadayati. Upapadayati Upapatya Sadhayati. So by Upapatti of the reasoning it is being shown. Iti Bhashyam Avatarayati Vedaha Svavishayaditi. And that is how Ratna Prabhakara explains the next statement of Bhashyakara. Says Ratna Prabha, Vedaha Svavishayat Adhikartha Jnanavajjanyah Pramana Vakyatvat Vyakarana Ramayanaadivadati Anumanantaram. Vedaha Svavishayat Adhikartha Jnanavajjanyah. Vedaha Janyah. Veda is created, Or Veda is a product of Adhikartha Jnanavat. Adhikartha Jnanavan, by the one who possesses Adhikartha Jnanam. So Svavishayat, Vedas address themselves to these disciplines of knowledge, and the one who has created the Vedas must necessarily be possessed of more knowledge than the knowledge that Vedas manifest. Vyakarana Ramayana, like the Karta of the Vyakarana must have more knowledge than what the Sutras reveal, or Karta of the Ramayana must have more knowledge than what the words of the Ramayana reveal, and so also the Karta of Vedas must have more knowledge than what the Vedas reveal. This is the idea. Anumanam. This is the Anumanam. Svavishayaditi, Svavishayat, Swapratipadyarthat, यह अधिकारथ है तद विषय का ज्ञानवत जन्य इत्यर्थ है. विषयात में स्वप्रतिपाद्यात, what the Vedas reveal, and so the creator must have more knowledge than that. That's the idea. Tatra vyaptimaha yadyaditi. Bhashyakara provides the vyapti. Yadyaditi. So Bhashya says on page 119, Yadyad vistarartham shastram yasmat purusha visheshat sambhavati yatha vyakaranadi paninyadehe ज्ञेयैकदेशार्थमपि सह ततोपि अधिकतर विज्ञानः इति प्रसिद्धं लोके. So yadyad vistarartham shastram, whichever is vistarartham shastram, vistirnam shastram, that shastra of the scripture which has an abundant scope. Not small little books we are talking about. We are talking about Shastra which has a vast scope. Like grammar, Vyakaranadi. It is a Shastra having thousands of sutras and which has a vast scope, which seeks to explain the language which is used by the common people as well as language used in the Vedas, and thus it seeks to explain almost everything that is one can know about the Vyakaranam. Therefore it is called Vistarartham Shastram, Vistirnam Shastram. That which is abundant Shastra, or Shastra having great scope of knowledge. But Gneye Ekadeshartham, even Vyakarana Shastra also is Gneye Ekadesha. It only presents one discipline of knowledge of the countless disciplines. So grammar is not the only discipline of knowledge in the world. There is grammar, there is Tarka, and there are all other disciplines of knowledge are there. Of them, one discipline of Gneye Ekadesha. Gneye means whatever is knowable. Of what there is knowable, one aspect is presented by Vyakarana Shastra or any Shastra. Gneye Ekadeshartham api Vistarartham. Even though Vyakarana Shastra presents only one branch of knowledge, even then it is a Shastra which has a vast scope. So don't think that one discipline of knowledge means a small Shastra. Even though it addresses itself with just one discipline of knowledge, still it's a vast scripture. Shastram. Yasmat Purusha Visheshat Sambhavati. Shastra suggests that it originates from Yasmat Purusha Visheshat Sambhavati. It is born of any particular person. But that Purusha must have some Visheshata, must have that knowledge. Some very distinguished person must be the creator of a Shastra, suggests that. Yatha Vyakaranadi Paninyadehe. Such great sages as Panini, etc. Saha means Panini. That Panini and others, Tatopi Adhikatara Vijnana. That writer must necessarily have more knowledge than the knowledge that is revealed by that great scripture. Iti prasiddham loke. This is something that is well known in the people. So this is Vyapti. And this Vyapti is stretched to the Vedas. Okay, we'll continue our discussion next time. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sūtra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Atha Shastrayo Nitva. Page 117, the Bhashya. Mahataha Rigvedade Shastrasya Aneka Vidyasthanopabrumhitasya Pradipavat Sarvarthavadyotinah Sarvagnikalpasya Yonihi Karanam Brahma Nahi Drishasya Shastrasya Rigvedadi Lakshanasya Sarvagniguణanvitasya Sarvagnyadanyata Sambhavosti Yadyad Vistarartham Shastram Yasmat Purusha Visheshat Sambhavate Yatha Vyakaranadi Paninyadehe Jnekadesharthamapi Saha Tatopi Adhikatara Vijnanaha Iti Prasiddham Loke. Now another line of arguments is presented here to show how Brahma is Veda Kartru. Karyagata Shaktimattvasya Karanagata Shakti Purvakatvat Karanagata Shakti Bhinnatvat Upadana Karanasya Sarvajñatvam Upadya. Since Brahman is Upadana Karanam, and therefore the Shakti or the power or the ability that obtains in the effect must necessarily be inherited from the cause, or it is the cause alone which in fact presents itself as an effect, and therefore the ability or the power that we find in the effect, in fact, is nothing but the power of the cause. In that manner, the Sarvajñatvam or the omniscience that we find in the Vedas is due to Brahman, or the Sarvajñatvam, the omniscience in Vedas, is in fact Brahman itself. In this manner, the omniscience of Brahman has been shown to be reasonable. Upapadya Veda Vishayartha Adhikartha Jnanavatvacha Sarvajñatvam Upapadayati. Now another line of arguments is presented that the one who is the creator of a Shastra or the originator of the Shastra must necessarily know more than what is expressed in the Shastra. Meaning the one who writes or composes must necessarily know more than what is expressed in words or what is expressed in writing. And therefore, if Vedas exhibit omniscience as their power, then Brahman, which is Veda Kartru, must have more knowledge than what is expressed in the Vedas. And in that manner also, the Sarvajñatvam or the omniscience of Brahma is being shown here. Sarvajñatvam upapadayati. Upatti means tenability, showing by reason. So shows by reason how Brahman is Sarvajñam by this other line of argument also. So Vedaha Suvishayaditi. That's what Ratnaprabhakara said on the bottom of page 118. Vedaha Suvishayad Adhikartha Jnanavajjanyah Pramanavakyatvat. That Veda must be Janyah, is born of Svavishayad Adhikartha Jnanavat. from the one who is possessed of adhikartha jnanam, possessed of more knowledge than svavishaya, whatever is addressed by the Vedas. So the Veda must be born of the one who has more knowledge than what is manifest in the Vedas. Pramana vakyatvat, because Veda is pramanam, meaning it does not depend upon another source of knowledge for its authenticity. If Vedas were not pramanam, in that case Vedas would have depended upon some other source of knowledge, in which case we cannot say that the creator of the Veda is Sarvagnya. For example, there are these sages who have written smritis, but smriti granthas are not considered to be pramanam in as much as they are based on Vedas, which is the original source of knowledge. And therefore, even though a smritikara has more knowledge than what the smriti has, we still cannot say that the smritikara is Sarvagnya, because smriti is not pramanam in as much as smriti is not Sarvagnya, because it depends upon another source of knowledge. So pramana vakyatvat, since Vedas are pramana vakya, meaning they are swatah pramanam, the words of the Vedas themselves are authentic, means that they are the source of knowledge without dependence upon any other source of knowledge. Like the eyes are a source of knowledge for the color without depending on any other source of knowledge. And therefore, pramanam always is true to reveals the knowledge true to the object. So Vedas also reveal the knowledge true to the object. Therefore Vedas have sarvajñatvam in them. And therefore, the one who is the creator of the Veda must necessarily be sarvajña. Vyakarana Ramayana Divaditi Anumanantaram. Just as the composer of Vyakarana is not Sarvagnya but more knowledgeable than Vyakarana. And the one who has written Ramayana knows more than what is expressed in the words in Ramayana. And so also, that is a Drishtanta. And so also, the composer or the one from whom the Vedas have originated must necessarily have more knowledge than the Vedas. That's the idea. Tatra vyaptimaha yadyaditi Shastrakara Bhashyakara said, Yadyad Vistarartham Shastram Yasmat Purusha Visheshat Sambhavati Yatha Vyakaranadi Paninyadehe Jnaika Deshartham Api Sahat Tatopi Adhikatar Vijnana Iti Prasiddham Loke. So Yadyad Vistarartham Shastram says Puranandiya on page 119, Vistarartham Shastram Idyatra Vistarasya Arthaha Pratipadanam Yasya Taditi Vigraha. Vistarartham Vistarasya Arthaha. Artha means Pratipadanam Yasya Tat. Where there is Pratipadanam or where there is teaching or unfoldment of that which is Vistara. Vistara means Vistirna. So that which is abundant or expansive in the scope is called Vistaram or Vistirnam Shastram. So that which is Vistaram, whatever it is, the knowledge, Pratipadanam of that knowledge is in Vedas, therefore it is called Vistarartham Shastram. Vistarasya Arthanam Yasya Tad Vistarartham Athva Vistarena Artha Alpartha Yasmin Itaditi Vigraha. Or that Shastra in which a given Artha is expanded, a little thing is expanded into great abundance. So Vedas may be looked upon as Vistarartham. So that is Vistaram is expanded, is explained where, or that which is, the meaning is there which is explained in detail. So either you can say that Vedas explain in detail something, or Vedas explain that which is itself abundant or which is expansive. Either way, Yasmin Taditi Vigraha. So the knowledge that so this is another way of presenting. That let us say Brahman is Vistaram, meaning that which is great or abundant. And Vedas are the scriptures which expound Brahman. Therefore it is called Vistarartham Shastram. Or whatever forms of knowledge is there in the world, they are explained in detail. Therefore also Vedas can be called Vistarartham Shastram. So that which explains in detail is Vistarartham, or that which is abundant is explained where is Vistarartham. Yadva atha shabdah dharmavachakah Vistarah shabdadhikya rupah artah dharma vishesha yasya tad vistarartham. Or you can say artha means dharma. So vistaraha dharma vishesha yasya tad vistarartham. Vistaraha means shabdadhikya rupaha. Because Ratnaprabha says vistaraha shabdadhikyam means abundance of words. Vedas are a vast literature. So many words are there. And there is an abundance of words there. But there is a meaning conveyed here that there is not abundance of meaning, but abundance of words. Where a small meaning is expanded into great words, that, so says here, अर्थ शब्द धर्मवाचक विस्तर शब्दाधिक्य रूप अर्थ धर्म विशेष यस्य तत्. That Vedas are those whose characteristic of nature is to have abundance of words. That is the nature of Vedas. तथा च शब्द बाहुल्यम अल्पार्थकम शास्त्रम. Any shastra, not only Vedas, any shastram, Veda. Vistara, yadit vistaraartham shastram. Not only Vedas, any shastra which is vistarartham. Shabda bahulyam alparthakam. Where the artha or what is conveyed is limited, but it is conveyed in number of words. That is the vistarartham shastram. So, this Vyakaranam is the illustration. That Vyakarana actually, or grammar, addresses itself to only one discipline of knowledge. Of the countless disciplines of knowledge, only one discipline of knowledge called Shabda Sadhutvam is alone addressed by Vyakaranam. In so many sutras, such an abundant shastra it is. And so that which explains in great detail a limited meaning is called Vistarartham Shastram. So by this expression Vistarartham Shastram, the way, what is interpreted is Shabdadhikyam Alparthatvam. Where there is adhikyam or abundance of shabda and there is a limitation of meaning. Id abhipretya vistara shabdarthamaha vistara iti shabdadhikyam. So Ratnaprabhakara said vistara means shabdadhikyam, where there is an abundance of words. Says Ratnaprabhakara anena arthatah alpatvam vadan. So the idea is that however great a shastra is, arthatah alpatvam, it can only convey a limited meaning. Meaning it can only address itself to a limited or one discipline of knowledge alone. And therefore, what artha will it convey? After studying Vyakaranam for perhaps number of years, what will you learn? You will only learn Shabda Sadhutvam. Meaning how to understand the meaning of a word, or how to understand the meaning of a sentence, how to understand the meaning of language. That's what you will learn. But you will not learn physics and chemistry and whatever other forms of disciplines of knowledge which also one should learn. That you will not learn. So having spent years and years in Vyakaranam, or any Shastra for that matter, all you learn is one aspect of one discipline of knowledge. And perhaps even not the entire discipline of knowledge, because no Shastra can cover the entire discipline of knowledge. Even Panini, which is an abundant scripture, cannot cover every idiosyncrasy of the language. So many rules and exceptions are given, and still you will find certain words and you will find certain usages which you cannot explain by Panini. And then we call it Chandasam, Arsham, etc. Meaning it is wrong. Actually that's what it means. If Panini is accepted as right, then anything that goes out of the scope of Panini is. But then we cannot call these Vedas as wrong, so we call it Chandasam. It is the license that the Rishis have. Arsham, the license that the Rishis have. This is how we say. It is either Rishis have license or Panini has license, one of the two. Either you can say that in spite of writing so many rules, that Panini has not been able to cover every usage. He would have to write infinite sutras, not less than infinite, to cover the whole language. Understand? Then what happens? Then subsequently the usefulness of the sutras becomes less and less. What you call the utility value of the sutras in the beginning is great. Then as you write, then for every little thing you will write sutras, which there are many. In Panini also there are many sutras which address themselves to one small little detail. And there are many sutras which cover vast ground in the beginning. Later on the sutras will cover smaller and smaller ground. And if you want to cover all the ground, you will require how much? How many sutras? You will require countless sutras really. Anyway, so the point is that any text any treatise will be only able to cover not the entire scope of even one discipline of knowledge. And of all the disciplines of knowledge which are there, a treatise can only address itself to one discipline of knowledge. From that standpoint alone it is said, Shabd Bahulyam Arthalpatvam, meaning the Shabd Bahulyam is there, many words are there, but what is conveyed is limited in that sense, not to put down the Vyakarana Shastra or anything, but just to give us a scope of it. Idea here is our idea is, or what we want to show is, Brahma is Sarvajñam. And for that, it happens that there is a looking down upon, belittling of others, because they are not Sarvajña. However great Panini and Valmiki and other sages are, you cannot call them Sarvajña, you cannot call them omniscient. And therefore, omniscient is one in primary sense, that is Brahman. And therefore, we have to show the limitation involved there, even in Panini or other sages. Just to glorify Brahman, not to condemn them, you understand? So, Anena Ratnavasa Arthataha Alpatvam Vadan. That Shastra has Arthataha Alpatvam. Shastra has so many words but conveys generally a limited meaning. Kartuhu Jnanasya Arthadikyam Suchayati. The idea is to glorify the Karta of any Shastra. That the Karta or the writer of the Shastra is always greater than the knowledge that is conveyed in the Shastra, and therefore the writer must necessarily have more knowledge than what the Shastra conveys. This is what is intended. Therefore Shastra seems to be belittled in order to glorify the Karta. So, Anena Arthataha Alpatvam Vadan Kartuhu Jnanasya Arthadikyam Suchayati. That Karta or the writer always has Arthadikyam. That knowledge has more scope, or much more knowledge is there in the writer. That's the idea. Adhikartha Vishakatvam Ityartha Drushyadecha Arthavadadikyam Vede. Even the words of the Vedas, not every word is necessarily useful in a direct sense. According to Mimamsakas, the real primary sentences of the Vedas are Vidhi and Nisheda, where they directly instruct what to do and what not to do. And there are many passages in the Vedas also which do not directly serve this purpose, but they indirectly serve the purpose of Vidhi. So they are called Arthavada, where there may be a sentence, that Brahmaji pulled out the fat from his thighs or whatever. So these sentences have no meaning of any kind, you see, except that it is said in context with a certain yaga. And therefore to glorify that yaga, that even for performance of this yaga, even Brahmaji also pulled out the fat, means he underwent such an amount of pain to perform this yaga. That shows the greatness of the yaga. So these kind of statements or passages are called Arthavada. And there are many passages are there in order to glorify something or in order to condemn something. So when you want to glorify something, you use many words. But the glorification ultimately is to create in you a certain value. To glorify Brahmaji, so as to glorify Brahma Vidya, so as to create a value for Brahma Vidya. And so many passages may be there in this manner, which do not directly serve the purpose other than glorifying something or condemning something else, in order to create a value or in order to make the listener desist from something. Either to inspire him to do something or to create in him a fear to desist from something else. So this also the Shastra does, and therefore we do find lot of Arthavada in Vedas. Says Dushyade Cha Arthavada Adikyam Vede, not to Arthadikyam, Arthavada Adikyam. Lot of Arthavada, such passages are there in Vedas also, and therefore even Vedas also have Shabda Bahulyam, Alparthatvam in that sense, that not every word necessarily is meaningful in a direct sense. So abundance of words is there, and compared to the number of words used, the relatively limited meaning is conveyed even by the Vedas. This is the idea. Again, to glorify the Veda Kartru. Says Purana Drushyade Chayadi वेदे बहवः अर्थवादाः सन्ति तस्मात् शब्दाधिक्यं दृश्यते भावः. Then continuing, यद्यत् शास्त्रं यस्मात् पुरुष विशेषात् संभवति स ततोपि अधिकतर विज्ञाः इति सामान्य व्याप्तिं भाष्यस्थ पदानि आदाय अन्वयमुखेन अर्थपूर्वकं दर्शयति. This is सामान्य व्याप्ति. That whoever, whichever shastra is created from whichever person, that person must necessarily have more knowledge than what is communicated by the shastra. This is general vyapti, meaning vyapti is, as we said, invariable concomitance or a universal relationship in general. This is explained by Ratnaprabha, Atra Esha Yojana. In this statement of Bhashyakara, this Yojana must be seen. यद्यत् शास्त्रम यस्माद् आप्तात् संभवति सह आप्तः ततः शास्त्रात् अधिकार्थ ज्ञानः इति प्रसिद्धम्. In a simpler language it is said. Sometimes Ratnaprabha simplifies what Bhashyakara says also. यद्यद् विस्तरार्थं शास्त्रम यस्मात् पुरुष विशेषात् संभवति यथा व्याकरण ततोपि अधिकतर, becomes very long and becomes very, roundabout sometimes. So, because Bhashyakara is in a different mood, and it's a different way, different, purpose of writing it anyway. So it is simplified, the prose order. Yadyat shastram yasmad aptat sambhavati, that shastra which has originated from which apta purusha means the one who is the pramana, the authentic person. Saha aptah tatah shastrat adhikartha jnanah. That person must necessarily have more knowledge than what the shastra conveys. Iti prasiddham. So, Purusha Visheshad Yasyarthamah Aptadidi Sahidi Apta Purusha. That's what it says. Okay. So, Yadyat Shastram Purusha Visheshat Sambhavati Tasmat Shastrad Anvayam Abhipretyah Tatah Shastrad Adhikartha Jnanati Prasiddham. Okay. Tatah means ये शास्त्र, ततः means shastra, that's the meaning. Tatah is from the bhashya, saha also is from bhashya. Tatah, so here Ratnaprabha also shows in bold the bhashya words. Yadyat shastram yasmad meaning aptat, saha tatah meaning shastrat adhikartha jnana iti prasiddham. So yatha shabda sadhutvadehi jnayekadeshah arthah yasya tadavi vyakaranaadi. So jnayekadeshartham, that is also a samasam. So jnayah ekadeshah arthah yasya tad jnayekadeshartham. Jnaya ekadeshah. Jnaya means that which is to be known or knowable. Ekadesha is one part. Jnaya ekadesha is meaning one part of whatever is to be known or what is knowable. Artha means pratipadanam. So where there is pratipadanam or exposition of one aspect of knowledge, one discipline of knowledge, where there is an exposition of one discipline of knowledge called Gnayekadeshartham Shastram, Yatha Vyakaranadi, just as Vyakaranam, etc. Shabda Sadhutvadihi. So what is that Gnayekadesham? Shabda Sadhutvadi, where sadhutvam is purification or is clear understanding of shabda. Shabda sadhutva meaning so clear understanding or proper understanding of the word, meaning proper understanding of the language is the purpose of vyakaranam. Tadapi vyakaranaadi paninyadehe अधिकार्थ ज्ञानात् संभवति. पाणिन्यादेह is the fifth case. Paninyadehe संभवति. Shastra suggests originates from Panini etc. who is adhikartha jnanat, one who is possessed of more knowledge than what Vyakarana conveys or Vyakarana expresses. Say Ratna Purna Yatha Vyakaranadi Paninyadehe Jnayikadeshathamapi. Oh, that's already done. भाष्य से अन्वय पूर्वकम अर्थ कथन द्वारा शास्त्रित अल्पार्थत्वम तत्कर्तु अधिकार्थज्ञत्वम च स्फुटीकुर्वन्. Idea is Shastra has limited meaning or it conveys limited knowledge, and the one who composes Shastra has more knowledge. That's the whole idea of this expressions here. Says पाणिन्यादिभिः ज्ञेयानां बहुनाम् अर्थानां मध्ये शब्द साधुत्वाद रूपार्थः एकदेशो भवति इत्यर्थः. So bahunam arthanam madhye, many things are to be known, of which Panini selected Shabda Sadhutvam, meaning proper understanding the word. That is what Panini selected as his discipline of knowledge, and therefore that Vyakarana Shastram is called Gneyika Desham. Vyakaranadi iti chhedah. Wherever. Huh? Vyakaranadi. Where was this necessary for him to say Chedhan? Vyakaranadi Paninyadehe. There is no Sandhi involved there. Okay. To say that Vyakaranadi is different from Paninyadehe, I do not know. तथा च ज्ञेयिकदेशात् व्याकरणादि स्वरूपम्य शास्त्रम् यस्माद् अधिकार्थ ज्ञानात् पाणिन्यादि सकाशात् जस्य सकाशात् फिफ्थ केस जायते सब पाणिन्यादि तस्मात् शास्त्रात् अधिकतर विज्ञानः यथा तथा ज्ञेय just as Panini has greater knowledge than व्याकरणम् तथा now ज्ञेयिकदेशार्थम् ऋग्वेदादि शास्त्रम् now similarly also ऋग्वेदादि शास्त्रम् ज्ञेयिकदेशार्थम् even ऋग्वेदादि शास्त्रम् also expresses the certain aspects of knowledge. So this is a great, bold statement here. Tasmat adhikartha jnat parameshwarat sambhavati. And therefore, that Rigvedadi Shastra must have originated from Parameshwara, who has more knowledge than that. Sa Parameshwara tasmat shastra adhikartha jnanavaniti bhava. That Parameshwara has more knowledge than the Shastra, namely Rigvedadi, which addresses itself to not the total scope of knowledge. And how is it so? That is also interesting. Just go back to the next page in the Purnanandi. Nanu Vedasya sarvartha pratibadakatvena tatopi adhikartha eva nasti iti chet. You say that Veda is sarvartha pratibadaka. Vedas only seem to expound everything that there is to be known. Tatopi adhikartha eva nasti. There is nothing more to be known than what the Vedas actually express. Iti chet, if this is what you say, na. दश विद्या स्थानेषु प्रतिपादितार्थ प्रकाशकत्वमेव वेदस्य. दिस दश विद्या स्थान धर्मशास्त्र मीमांसा न्याय पुराण and षड vedanga, these are the दश विद्या स्थानानि. So apparently whatever meaning is included in the dasha vidya sthana, that alone is included in the Vedas and not more than that. This is the idea here. So dasha vidya sthaneshu pratipaditartha prakashakatvamev vedasya sarvartha prakashakatvam iti angikarat. So when we say vedasya sarvartha prakashakatvam, this he may be treading in a dangerous ground on his own actually, because that is not necessarily intended perhaps by Bhashyakara, who will ever not even in the dream say that Vedas, there can be anything that is left out of the Vedas, When Mahabharata is considered Panchama Veda, and said Vyasochistam Jagat Sarvam, that there is nothing that is not covered in Mahabharata. If it is not covered in Mahabharata, it is not there. So boldly they make statement about Mahabharata, which is considered the fifth Veda, then definitely they will say that there is nothing which is not covered by the Vedas. And for someone to say that Vedas only cover a limited aspect of knowledge is very risky. But it is being said here in order to show the omniscience or to glorify Brahma, which is Veda Kartaru. सर्वजन व्यवहार विषय लौकिकार्थस्य अधिकस्य संभवेन. That all the Vedika Jnanam is one, Laukika Jnana is another one. Vedas only address themselves to Vedika Jnanam, which is Atindriyam, and as far as all the Indriya Vishayam Jnanam is concerned, which is Laukikam Jnanam, that Vedas do not address themselves. In that sense it is said that Vedas also do not reveal everything, because what can be revealed by the available means of knowledge, Vedas do not. Vedas are pramana with reference to Atindriya Vishaya. So you can say that they reveal everything that is not perceptible to the senses, which is beyond the human intellect. All that is to be known is all revealed by the Vedas, and not necessarily what is known or knowable to the human intellect. In that sense it is said Sarvartha Prakashakatvam. सर्वजन व्यवहार विषय लौकिकार्थस्य अधिकस्य संभवेन तत्कर्तुः ईश्वरस्य अधिकार्थ ज्ञानवत्वम्. Whereas Ishvara is the one who has created all these means of knowledge also. Ishvara has created not only Vedas, which are the means of knowledge for Atindriya Vishaya, but Ishvara has created all the other means of knowledge like the sense organs of perception, mind and intellect, which are the means of knowledge for Laukika Vishaya. So Ishvara, who has created all the Pramana, necessarily has more knowledge than Veda, which is one of the Pramanam. In that sense, we say that Ishvara is Sarvajna. So Sambhavena Tatkartuhu Ishvarasya Adhikartha Jnanavatvam Yuktamiti Anavadyam. And therefore, to say that Ishvara has more knowledge definitely is free from fault. Anavadyam has no fault at all. Although that is not quite the tone in Ratnaprabha. For example, says Ratnaprabha on the page 120, यदि अल्पार्थमपि शास्त्रम अधिकार्थ ज्ञानात् संभवति, if व्याकरणादि which is अल्पार्थम which communicates a limited, which has a limited scope of knowledge, अधिकार्थ ज्ञानात् संभवति or अधिकार्थ ज्ञात संभवति, if Panini, I mean the व्याकरणादि शास्त्रम originates from someone like Panini who is more knowledgeable than the knowledge that is manifest in the Vyakarana Shastra. If this is the case, tada asya mahatah ityadi shrutehe. So when Bhashyakara said asya mahatah ityadi shrutehe, asya mahato bhutasya nishvasidam yadeta drugvedah. So ityadi shrutehe yasman mahatah अपरिच्छिन्नात् भूतात् सत्याद् योनेः सकाशात् अनेक शाखा इत्यादि विशिष्टस्य वेदस्य पुरुष निश्वासवत् अप्रयत्नेनैव संभव तस्य सर्वज्ञत्वं सर्वशक्तित्वं किमु चेति किमु वक्तव्यमिति. So that part we have not read. Bhashyakara says that asya mahato bhutasya, this is what the Shruti says. Ityadi shrutehe yasmad mahatah. Brahman is described as mahat, meaning aparichinnat bhutat. That being, namely Brahman, which is aparichinnam, which is limitless. Satyad, which is true, meaning which is ever truth of the nature of truth, with abadhitam. Yonehe sakashad, which is the yoni of the cause, fifth case, sakashad. Aneka shakha ityad vishishtasya, that Rigvedadi Shastra which aneka shakha aneka vidya sthano brahmitasya. Here also it is aneka shakha aneka shakha bheda bhinnasya. In this manner Bhashyakara describes Vedas. Shastra which is so great as this, Purusha nishwasavat aprayatnaneva sambhava, and such Vedas are originated from Brahma or the God, from God by effortlessly. Purusha nishwasavat aprayatnaneva, aprayatna, without effort, like the nishwasa or outgoing breath of, for breathing in you may have to make an effort. Breathing out there is no effort at all, and therefore, so breathing out which is so effortless, in that manner the Vedas are originated from which? From God. Tasya sarvajñatvam sarvashaktimatvam cha kimu vaktavyam. That is sarvajña and sarvashaktimat. Kimu vaktavyam, what to talk of that? That such Paninians themselves are so great, then what to talk of Brahma, which is the creator of, originator of the Shastras such as Rigvedadi. This is the whole idea here. And so Bhashyakara says, in the bottom line of page 119, किमु वक्तव्यम् अनेक शाखा भेद भिन्नस्य देवतिर्यं मनुष्य वर्णाश्रमादि प्रविभाग हेतोः ऋग्वेदाद्याख्यस्य सर्वज्ञानाकरस्य अप्रयत्नेनैव लीलान्यायेन पुरुषनिश्वासवत् यस्माद् महतो भूताद्योनेः संभवः अस्य महतो भूतस्य निश्वसितं यदेतदृग्वेदः इत्यादि श्रुतेः तस्य महतो भूतस्य निरतिशयं सर्वज्ञत्वं सर्वशक्तिमत्वं चेति किमु वक्तव्यम? Then what to talk of this sarvajñatvam and sarvashaktimatvam of asya mahato bhutasya, that being which is referred to as asya mahato bhutasya in the Shruti, the omniscience and omnipotent of that being, namely Brahman. What to talk of that when sages such as Panini and Valmiki themselves are almost omniscient? Then what to talk of the primary omniscience of Brahman and omnipotent, of course, for creation of the universe? What to talk of that? And for that, Veda is described in so many words. Aneka shakha bheda bhinnasya. This Rig Veda Adi Shastram, which has so many shakhas, so many dissensions, so many branches are there. Not only there are 4 primary Vedas, but each Veda also has so many shakhas. And it is said, that Samaveda has 1000 recensions. So it is said. And of which 2 or 3 recensions are available to us. And so it is accepted that many texts are lost to us. And therefore the literature which we call Vedas, which is available to us, is perhaps only a part of the total literature. And therefore if you find that certain subjects are not addressed, you may have to imagine that that part is lost, or whatever it is. Aneka shakha bheda bhinnasya, that's why people want to see all geology there and zoology there and rockets and there, all kinds of things they want to find in Veda, mathematics and things like that. So there are books on Vedic mathematics, and then Ved Vigyan Academy did some research work on the geology, and some mantras are there for locating water, for when you are drilling wells for water, and chant certain mantras to invoke water and things like that. So lots of other disciplines of knowledge are there in the Vedas apart from moksha.